The vision, a world where all people live free of the burden of drug abuse. This is the Drug Free America Foundation's Pathway to Prevention podcast, where we are committed to developing strategies that prevent drug use and promote sustained recovery. Thank you for not only tuning in, but your continued support and efforts to help make this world a better place. We hope you enjoy this episode. You know, as well as we do, that in this increasingly challenging world, it takes a lot of effort to educate and empower children who belong to the marginalized, unrecognized, and ignored segments. My guest's work has succeeded in creating socially responsive, self-reliant communities that work together to create safe environments for children, as well as sustainable change through collective participation. They catalyze social change by innovating and piloting model solutions that governments and implementing agencies can replicate using technical knowledge, in-depth understanding of the challenges, and unique insights gleaned from 15 years of dedicated work. In Kerala, through Project VENDA, they have educated and empowered over 120,000 children to say a form of no to drugs and help them make responsible choices using a range of well-planned initiatives, which have been recognized by the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime as the best practices for evidence-based intervention. By 2024, they will positively impact the lives of 500,000 students. Without further ado, I am honored to welcome Diana Joseph, Managing Trustee of the Fourth Wave Foundation, to the podcast. Diana, welcome.
Right. So I am speaking to you from a very little small state down south in the country of India. It's called Kerala. And I sit in a very beautiful setting of the sea, the countryside, greenery, and it's called God's own country. And it's the tail tip of the large country of India. And I work for the organization called Fourth Way Foundation. Fourth Way Foundation was set up by me 15 years ago. And the objective of the organization was to work with child rights issues and safety, security, and inclusion of children in the mainstream and education spaces. And I am qualified as a researcher. That's the background that I hold for development work. I am a social scientist in the development, social development, and my key area of work is around community problem solving. And two of my projects are today state-run projects, taking a bit to unfold a model, try it, test, and then hand it over to the government. So the project that we're talking about today, Project VENDA, is situated in the state of Kerala, and we work in the area of narcotics and drugs, the issue of children taking to increased choices of getting into the use of narcotics and drugs.
I wish I could see that beautiful countryside. Well, would you mind sort of sharing what led you to working in your current role?
Oh, yes. So, like I mentioned earlier, my work is around child rights issues and more to do with the safety of children and their access to education and mainstream lifestyles. If you know India, then you know India is a country of mixed, settings in terms of what we see as a portrayed India versus a reality of India. And a lot of our populations are living in very limited resource settings. And in these settings are children who actually struggle to have a decent lifestyle, a fair childhood, access to education, and children with disabilities and other vulnerabilities, or children coming from high-risk areas really do not have those access. And we're looking at this little state called the state of Kerala, fairly high on various factors in terms of literacy and employment, but is also facing the issue of increased substance abuse addiction. And with youngsters, teens, young adults, and young working populations, there has been a marked rise in the last decade in terms of the influx of narcotics and drugs, opioids into these spaces where children go to schools and young adults are working because there's high affordability. So what we do is to develop, develop our own approaches that are very community specific in terms of intervention, because we're a very diverse country in terms of the way the population is dispersed, dialect, language, culture, tradition, the food, and all of it. So one approach really doesn't fit. And what we do is we work in these communities to help them take ownership of the problem. We teach parents, teachers, school authorities, and young adults themselves to be able to broach this topic, discuss it, and be able to actually prevent that it really matters.
It sounds like your team there at Fourth Wave Foundation is filled with passionate, caring individuals. And I love how you just kind of hinted at the programs. The interventions are all community specific because of the diverse country, the diverse communities. And that's something that we like to talk about a lot, that the answers are within the community. The good does exist. I'd love to dive in and learn more about Project VENDA as one of your programs, your success stories. Would love to hear more about it. So what is Project VENDA?
Project VENDA literally translates into say no in the local language, that's Malayalam. So the state speaks a very specific language. It's Malayalam, and in local language, VENDA means say no. And our project clearly addresses age groups between age 12 and 22, young adults, teens and young adults, because there is an increasing issue of kids taking to choices of alcohol, tobacco, narcotics, and drugs, serious drugs. So this project not only has a face that enables the population to be able to stand up and take control of the issue, but it has a very values in teaching them to be able to say no. They know that doing drugs and alcohol and tobacco is not right for the age. They know it and will take to it. But what they really lack is the ability to say no, or to be able to say VENDA in the face of addiction or peer pressure, or whenever this is, thrust in their face in terms of try it, use it. So the project actually clearly addresses prevention as the largest approach to keeping kids safe. And when we say safe, we are saying substance abuse free environment, S.A.F.E. And so looking at treatment and recovery, because a good subset of children that we work with also land in treatment and recovery programs because the problem is so high. Then we look at long-term counseling and care. So there are a lot of children and young adults who need long-term care in terms of supporting them to stay away, keep away from circles that are influencing them into the use. And then how we do it is also very interesting, because it's just not enough to teach them to say no, but we also need to teach them to say yes to a lot of things that keep them away from environments like this. So we have a very thriving alternative pursuits program, a kind of adaptation of the Icelandic model. The emphasis on sports is what we have as our alternative pursuits program, while there is arts, theatre, music, and all the other activities that keep youngsters engaged. Sports has actually clearly come out as this big game changer for enabling prevention. And we have a serious program called the Football Cup, the VENDA Cup, that is conducted across these vulnerable districts where we work, which then culminates with talking about children who really wouldn't get access. We have great case studies who've made it to international games, gone to Cardiff, gone to England and Wales to be representing their country.
I am fascinated by Project VENDA, or Say No. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you were able to empower the children, the youth, the kids with sports. How did that come to be?
Luckily, Kerala is a state that is crazy about football. So it's very surprising that this small little state in India is compared to places that really, really love football, crazy about football. So if you came down to Kerala and went into the villages to see huge cutouts of Messi and Ronaldo and all of them up there during the season, because we are one of those states that's massively campaigning around football and football for kids. So it is interesting that we come from a state like this, and in the last few decades, what has happened is that the national players from Kerala were known to play serious football, and we've lost that out because our youngsters are no more, focused on games and sports. So we've moved into this curriculum academic performance, and schools have actually shut their after school hours, and schools don't work for sports anymore. So there has been a shift in the last few decades into curriculum and academics and the pressure around it, while sports is something that we as a state had great emphasis on. So we've at the project actually been able to revive commitment to sports, schools focusing on sports, because that was somewhere lost down in the last 2 decades. So right now we will see a buzz. So we actually go into these communities and we're able to actually organize them into small groups, give them full-fledged training, aspirations and youngsters to be able to pursue serious sport. And with that comes the whole surprise of stars coming out of training camps, stars coming out of these local selection groups that have enough resources and opportunity, not enough time and availability of space. We are a coastal belt, and that's why there is an increased access to narcotics, because our maritime routes are being used to transit drugs. And the entire coastal belt, the youth of the coastal belt are kind of prone to actually trading and taking to these drugs. And the gender is also a serious issue. There's no gender gap when it comes to taking to drugs, because the entire industry is run on the shoulders of children, because due to humanitarian reasons, even if children are taking to drugs or they're found peddling or muling these drugs, the enforcement and the cops, the police, kind of send them off with a warning. There is no process where they actually go through counseling, care, and bringing them out of this problem. They just sent out. History kind of runs on the shoulders of these children. So their access to quick money, their access to products, gadgets, designer clothes, all of that kind of keep them in the trade, and they miss out on active sports. And we've been rather in churning up some local stars, which kind of feeds back into the program when children look up to these youngsters who were first into a lifestyle that was peddling drugs, and responsible about their choices and advocating.
A community that loves football, but the youth were not able to play, to enjoy it due to the trade and football or after school activities being removed from academics. What barriers or challenges did you experience when you started Project VENDA?
One of the biggest barriers that we faced and still face right now is denial. Starting from the community, the parents, the schools, there's a serious denial, more so because of the stigma. Stigma is a big issue here. And from all quarters, I think denial of public policy and public health is down to communities where the schools are run and parents are being engaged. So there is a total denial in the process that we face. That's the biggest challenge when we work in this space.
Even with those challenges, looking at the Fourth Wave Foundation, you have already educated and empowered over 120,000 children. What are some of the other impacts that you have seen from Project VENDA?
Project VENDA has managed to really create a kind of a social resonance when it comes to the issue of narcotics and drugs and keeping children safe. Initially, there was not one voice that unified the community to come together to take action. While all of them knew in different quarters that they were facing the problem, there was a fear of stigma. There's a fear of, battling the unknown, like the mafia. They didn't know how to actually organize themselves into groups that could actually take this issue and bring the faces of children out and show that there were stories that really were at lives at risk. So kind of VENDA became the banner under which this was possible, and we seriously worked with approaching this as a very prevention-led program, which meant that we could actually create safe spaces within our communities where children could come and play and be safe, and they could go to schools and the parents are not worried about it. So it kind of became this whole prevention program that set into motion communities to be able to organize themselves to understand and take charge of the problem. We've also kind of worked in bringing a unified voice when it comes to protecting children, and been able to work with schools, school management, the government, public spaces to open up places for our children to be able to come out and play and engage and socially interact and still feel safe and not threatened by groups that are, actually targeting youngsters and children. So VENDA has actually also been able to influence public policy and get the government to take ownership of the problem. So in 2019, with the help of the World Federation Against Drugs and the UNODC office in Vienna, we were able to bring together some 33 countries in the Asia-Pacific region into this small village in Kerala to be able to discuss about the future of children in the world of drugs and narcotics. And we put out a white paper that helped the current government here to be able to gracefully, take this on as a project plan and slowly come out with public policies that were kind of created the big theme of keeping children safe and dealing with enforcement as a government's prerogative to address this issue. So VENDA has been able, while in these large dimensions, been able to bring consensus on taking charge of the issue, also working at very grassroots levels, impacting lives. So like I mentioned about stories of youngsters who have gone through treatment and recovery, who've actually been into long-term counseling and care right now working with us. They are come on board as a team. There are lots of people we've recruited from the communities that we work in now doing full-time work with us in the area of prevention. These are a few success stories. I could go on all day about it, but these are a few stories.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, you are making a difference in those communities and those children's lives. What is next or in the future for Project VENDA?
Project VENDA actually has developed this approach that's been able to not only pull together overwhelming evidence that many of the issues that undermine or enhance our health outcomes have structural and social or behavioral factors. So what we want to really focus on is to address that These engagements or prevention programs that we design for has to be very community specific and very grassroots in terms of designing them. We are looking at environments where we live, work, and play to adapt to these needs of the local community. We're looking at how education, employment, income, and access to healthcare services can be distributed well enough so that the issues that arise out of, or the problems that we've been facing right now, can be taken care of. Like a state like mine doesn't have a child care center. Right now, children are sent into adult care homes. We don't have narcotics and drugs or opioid specific treatment. There's no child treatment protocols here, while the children are being sent into adult de-addiction homes. So all of these are serious social health issues that we want to address. And we're hoping that we will have enough centers that can actually take care of our children and also have gender-specific approaches when it comes to treatment and care. We're also looking at addressing a whole social normalization that's been happening in terms of drug use and narcotics. There's serious effort by Project VENDA to be working with the media, the movie, the cinemas, the advertising, all of that, who very conveniently product place and make taking to these kind of risk behaviors as normal, being a normal social engagement issue. So we work in various areas, and we seriously are looking at reinforcing that there is a serious role for us as a generation now to kind of influence the way our kids make choices, and making healthy choices is important. So Project VENDA is really moving into that space to protect public health. And there's a growing appreciation that these policies have collectively contributed to the social change right now. So we're hoping to aggregate that and kind of influence behavior, not only socially, but also politically.
You and your team are busy doing wonderful, wonderful work. We had talked earlier, you had shared about football and the VENDA Cup. Can we talk a little bit more about the empowering messaging, the teaching the children how to say no? What does that look like?
So what we do at Project VENDA is work with government schools. Government schools are the mid or low income groups, categories where children actually access public schooling systems. And that kind of addresses populations who are vulnerable or coming from high risk areas. So we are a coastal community in terms of the state and the schools that we work with distributed along the coastline. And what we do is go into the classrooms, into the schools, 6th grade upwards. We're addressing small focus groups of children, 30, 40 children who we can interact with for more than an hour or two. And we practically enable them, or we run peer group programs that teach them to say no. As simple as there is a cultural context of the little state that we come from, that there is exposure to alcohol and tobacco early on in life in their families. So that means parents use it, and fathers often are into the problem of addiction because of alcohol. So there is a tendency in the household where the child is being exposed to early use of substances. And that kind of escalates because they, as early as 5 years, 6 years old, are serving the drink or bringing the drink or buying the drink. And it's kind of normalized that, and it's an initiation thing as well by 12, 13 that children take to drugs. Take to alcohol. So graduating from gateway substances into alcohol kind of is is so easy for youngsters today because of the access to the drug. There's also an affordability factor. So what we do is in focus groups, teach them to be able to say no. And even to be a little, candid, we teach them to say refuse or, say no to their own parents if they're asked to bring in the alcohol or serve the drink or pour a drink or, get the ice. So stuff like that is where we actually start, which is a harsh reality, but this is the truth of the place that we come from. Starting from that, we also then move into graduating to, how to be able to face their peer pressures in terms of trying these substances. Then there is another side of the whole story where they are actually targeted by groups for trading, muling, and ferrying these drugs. So how do you broach that when it comes to a certain age? And then finally is to be able to actually bring them out of these issues when they're deep into it. So these are all different methodologies that we follow. These are very, very strategic interventions that we've designed, very community specific. And also this is being implemented by the community itself. So it's not just a set of, social development workers who are going in, but we are picking up stars from the community, people who are very socially sensitive and active to stand up and be able to address that in their communities. We also have a very fine crew of professionals, doctors, psychiatrists, mental health workers, people who are in this space, who really know how to do it scientifically in terms of bringing children out of addiction problems. So it's a whole gamut of services that we're offering in ways that we are able to engage different community members. And football kind of, or sport, aspiration to excel in sport kind of becomes the level playing field, where kids brought together despite their beliefs, their social status, how deep they are into the problem. All of that kind of is leveled out when they come to play. So we've designed very clear curriculums that teach youngsters to make right choices, look at value systems, look at being able to make ethical decisions. And one of those key awards that we give in our football games is the Fair Play Award. That is so important to Project VENDA that we have a whole set of gears and paraphernalia that kind of is given out for children who understand fair play and who practice it and who are able to learn out of it. So we have a whole module around ethical decision making, responsible choices, and all of that designed with Fair Play Awards in mind. So even with the story of the two youngsters who went to Cardiff to play, they were representing the country from this little community where we've been working for 3-4 years. And the only thing we told them was that they go and play fair and come back. Kids, just they can get into an argument quick, into a fight just for nothing. And it's a lot of work to be able to orient them. And it's not only that they played for the country, they came back with the Dragon Cup, but of all the 60 countries that played, these two boys from this little village came back with the Fair Play Awards given out at the Slum Soccer in England, in Cardiff in Wales. So that's how much we actually emphasize on valuable choices that children make. So it's a, like everybody knows, everybody who works in the prevention recovery space knows that working with children is very diverse, and there's a lot of sensitivity when it comes to actually orienting them into lifestyle choices. So Project VENDA, the VENDA Cup, you should really go to the website to see how it works, and on the Instagram and the Facebook. Project VENDA, if you type out VENDA, Project VENDA, you'll see this whole array of photographs of youngsters having fun, girls in groups. And one thing we've also managed to do that I want to highlight is get girls to play football. that was not something that was seen at all. And we started with 2 girls groups that we really had to, work hard to put together. And today, as of the last year, we had around 32 girls teams playing for the Venda Cup. So all of these are achievements, and these are very beautiful ways in which we've actually designed those community engagement programs for children and the community to participate.
And listeners, I will put links to the website, the Instagram, and Facebook so you can see the remarkable work, the pictures of the Venda Cup, and everything to go along with it. But Diana, you had said something that was very important. I wanted to just come back to it for our audience. You said that working with the schools, the education, and coming into the communities, the services aren't delivered by folks from outside of the community. The community itself implements the programs. How did you get to that point for that community to take ownership of Project Venda?
Like I mentioned, there was this, or we still struggle with the fact that people are not open about discussing the issue of the children taking to narcotics and drugs, primarily because of stigma. So if we were to talk prevalence of the problem, the way we would kind of categorize prevalence is that if you spoke to a group of 5 or 10 people, and you ask them if they were aware of the problem, all the 10 of them will say yes. And then if you ask them if they knew anybody in their own families who had succumbed or is struggling or is trying to manage it, then at least half of them will put up their hands up. That's 5 of them. And then if you asked if there was somebody in the immediate family or in their homes that is actually going through this issue, then technically, again, half the crowd will put up their hands. That's how intense the problem is, or how prevalent the problem is. But then they didn't have enough reason to be able to organize themselves into groups to say, okay, our children are in trouble or our homes are affected directly by it. So I think Project Venda was that one trigger. And for me to have taken up this issue, it was also because of a research that was commissioned, and the government had not put aside any action plan for teens and young adults. While they had massive plans for adult de-addiction and adult programs, there was nothing addressing young teens and children. And when we went out into the communities, we kind of got the pulse that they were all looking up for somebody or from the outside to be able to unify them. And I think we just had to go in and say, yes, these are tried and tested methods, and these are the things that we've seen work. They self-organized into groups, especially the schools kind of took it up very seriously, because this was something they really didn't know how to address, and they didn't know what to do in terms of taking control of the problem. So we had to initially make presentations, public information campaigns. We kind of included former drug users to be able to share firsthand accounts, kind of relive their experiences, and talk about their resiliency and stuff that really brought them back into real life and the journey that the difficulty of that journey. All of those stories actually kind of put things in perspective, and I think we were just instrumental in harnessing community power to be able to work and bring some results and effort into this issue.
Information awareness, and sounds like you're building relationships with the community members, getting to know them and letting them get to know you and your vision, your mission, your programs and services. But I want to build on that strategic approach to empowering the community. What insights or lessons learned have you gleaned from Project VENDA?
We just know one of those serious intervention lessons that we've learned is that there is resistance to change, but there is also a greater a need for change. And when people are oriented, guided, or shown the need for change, there is great response. And even among the stakeholder groups that we clearly address, that is the teens and the young adults, there's a fair bunch, that is a 70-75% who are vulnerable, who are not into the problem. But they're fence sitters for many reasons. They are the vulnerable populations who can any day fall into it. And making them realize that they are important, they have a relevance, their choices matter, and and not only matter to them, but it also matters to their community, kind of gets this whole awakening happening. And because the problem is so large, Dave, in the state that I'm coming from, we are just looking at a serious epidemic unfold in terms of taking to opioids, tranquilizers, off the counter drugs. That's going to happen. India is going to be the pharmacy hub of the world in a decade. And with that comes those legit precursors that we have here for producing pharma meds. And that's seeping into our market. So we are looking at various aspects of these addiction problems that's going to unfold in India. And I think we've become that one voice that has been raising these red flags and getting parents and community and the government to start doing something about it at public health and policy levels. So the other large aspect is the crime rate. There's organized crime, both domestically and abroad, kind of targeting these populations, kind of also influencing this public consciousness. So we are looking at being able to address that. And these learnings are what kind of is guiding our journey into being able to effectively work with these groups here.
Some beautiful lessons and insights there. Thank you for sharing those. What advice would you give to our listeners as they may see some issues within their own communities and want to take action, or they're a part of a group that is working in a community? What advice would you offer them?
I think as a community, we have a serious responsibility when it comes to our children making choices. I think as adults, we are to be held responsible for the choices that children make. I think we are directly, we need to take the ownership that we are creating an environment where our children are not able to make those healthy, valuable life choices, because we are normalizing a whole lot of behavior that is directly going to affect their lifestyle, their health, mental health and wellness in the long run. So as a community, I think we seriously need to sit back and take ownership of the fact that we are creating a community where our children are not going to be able to make easy, healthy choices. And what we really need to do, people who are creating that world for them, is to be able to apply standards to drug demand reduction, which we've spoken out at the UN and various platforms by various groups. But how does it actually translate to a normal household? How do normal parents, lay people understand and practically use those standards to explain it to their children or teachers to their students? We need to be able to create those communication tools where we're able to show the community that they are to make choices and make choices that really affect the long-term health and wellness. So What we really need to do, I think, is create standards for drug demand reduction and kind of focus towards minority substance using populations rather than the non-drug using majorities. We need to create clear communication designs for that and help people stay away from it. So prevention, the way I see it for countries like mine, where the population is large, the resource is scarce, or where public health doesn't really exist, we really need to promote the science of prevention and really teach youngsters to, not only youngsters, communities to be able to make those choices that really keep their children safe.
You have shared so much wisdom today. I could ask questions for hours, just learning more and more from you, but I know your time is precious. Before we wrap up this episode, I would love to learn just a little bit more about the Fourth Wave Foundation. Can you kind of tell us more about what Fourth Wave Foundation has to offer? And how could our listeners get involved or offer support?
Yes. The foundation primarily is focused on child issues. And one of the many issues that children face today is the world of normalizing behavior that is normalizing behavior around substance abuse and drug addictions. So Fourth Wave is in that space where it's not very easy for us to engage with people who understand that there is a long-term investment in the cause now, because I think everybody who wants to support causes are looking at immediate results, crunching numbers, showing immediate change factors. But something like what we're talking today is a whole process change that we need to bring in, and we really don't find people who buy into the idea of strategic long-term engagements with communities. So yes, if there are people out there who understand this and who really believe in keeping children safe would be in substance abuse-free environments, then we need people with expertise who have done this, who have had best practice stories in their work, people to engage with our communities, bring these sharings into the work that we do. So on the website is a page where we have put aside for resources and time. And if people can match that, and if they can come down to this I'm welcoming the world, whoever is listening into this beautiful state of Kerala. It's called the God's own country. But yes, we need wonderful people to join hands to be able to safeguard our community. So
I will put links to the Fourth Wave Foundation in the show notes. Listeners, check out those show notes and visit the website. There's a lot of wonderful information there as well. But before we close out, I would like to invite you to share any last call to action or words of wisdom for our listeners.
Yes. Thanks, Dave. I just have to say thank you. It was so encouraging to have this conversation with you today, and especially to speak to people who understand this issue. And so, my one, I think, closing statement, I'm not one for advices, but I firmly believe that protecting and fostering health of the upcoming generation from illicit drugs and harms is a very powerful and responsible space for us as a generation today. And I think we need to seize that and create safe environments for our children. So we need to do everything possible as, small voices, as vulnerable voices. I don't know how, but we need to be able to bring this large message of fostering health of the upcoming generation. It's priority. It's priority if we need to survive as the human race.
And with that wisdom, that beautiful, beautiful thought and call to action, let's bring this episode to a close. Diana, it has been an honor to speak with you today. Thank you so much for sharing the story, the insights, and the lessons learned behind Project VENDA. And thank you for doing the work that you are doing at the Fourth Wave Foundation. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's really exciting to have this discussion with you, and love to all the viewers and I think the people who are listening. And thank you all.
That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. Together, we are stronger.